You're listening to Dateline Latin America, Tear Gas and Tango with
Joe Goldman, 37 years with ABC News, then with UPI, with The Village Voice, and many other.
And me, Daniel Schweimler, originally from London, formerly of the BBC, 19 years, and more recently with Al Jazeera English across Latin America.
They'll be sitting at a kitchen table in Buenos Aires talking about their journalistic adventures across the region, covering earthquakes, flooding and fires, talking to presidents, charlatans, sports stars and other newsmakers. In short, journalism and the state of the world.
Well, Daniel, before anything, I just have to say one thing. Congratulations, you've moved into the northern suburbs, and you are a neighbor.
We're now neighbours, yeah. I'm happy to be here in the Florida suburb, just outside of the city of Buenos Aires in the province, where I'm told a better class of person lives. So
That's right.
yes. We shall try to be good neighbours. So, Joe, 18th of July is another anniversary, the 31st anniversary of the bombing of the AMIA Jewish Cultural Center in Buenos Aires. 1994, 85 people killed, over 300 people injured. I wasn't living in Buenos Aires at the time, but you were, and you were there very shortly after the bomb went off.
About 30 or 40 minutes later, I got there because I heard the bomb from my house and knew something was up, and turned on the radio, got the news, and ran straight there took a taxi right in there and saw the carnage right away. I have to say that, to me, I know that it's an anniversary coming up. And how do I know? Because the courts here, which have done nothing as far as investigating, will suddenly announce at the end of June, the beginning of July, as the anniversary nears, that they're doing something. This year it was they're going to try in absentia the Iranians. There's always that going on to try to cover up the fact that for 50 weeks out of the year, they do absolutely nothing.
Well, they contradict one another. There have been investigations. There have been, endless weeks, months of investigations, but nobody, as far as I'm aware, despite calling for the Iranians, for members of Hezbollah to be tried, Argentine police who were involved at the time to be tried, nobody has ever served a minute in jail. Is that correct for the 85 deaths?
I think people have served in jail, but they were people who they just brought in probably in end of June, beginning of July, as sacrificial lambs to the lack of investigation. From the beginning, this investigation was tainted because the investigators went all around the world. They went to Mexico, Venezuela, they went to Germany, they went all around looking for Hezbollah, looking for Iranians, when the real investigation should have been at the epicenter of the explosion. They should have known, because today we don't even know how the bomb was delivered. We don't know. I mean, they will say something about a traffic.
A Renault traffic, yeah, that's.
If you look in our book, we have a whole bunch of witnesses who were there at the moment and said they saw no vehicle whatsoever.
And the book you refer to, let me just grab a copy of it here. Cortina de Humo, written by Joe Goldman and Jorge Lanata. For those who don't know, Jorge Lanata was a prestigious journalist in his day, now the late Jorge Lanata, founder of the Página, or co-founder of the Página 12 newspaper. So you investigated with him to produce this book.
7 other people. We did an investigation for months afterwards, and then a group of us stayed with one of the groups of families who were affected by this horrendous event, and we worked for a year in compiling evidence. I'll give you an idea, Daniel. We did something. I have a little bit of, I'm scared of heights a little bit. I've gotten over it over the years by flying in helicopters over earthquake zones or whatever. But in the investigation we did, talking to people from Scotland Yard, from the FBI, what do? They go and they collect evidence from rooftops, from trees, from balconies of to try to find out what was the epicenter of the bombing, what was near the epicenter. We did that. We went to, I believe it was 52 rooftops in the area.
So you did this, but the forensic cops didn't do
No,
this. Yeah.
the forensic cops had been to two of the 52 buildings that we went to. Two. They just basically didn't do anything at the scene of the explosion. We've talked about that in London, there was an explosion a week later. We talked to people from Scotland Yard. I mean, they literally had people climbing up trees to gather pieces of the metal to put together the bombing, where it was, what happened, how it was. They really did that job. Here, nothing was done like that.
And this was a big bomb, wasn't it? I mean, it was 275 kilograms, 600-pound bomb, fertilizer, I believe, wasn't it?
Yes, it was a fertilizer-based bomb.
Ammonium, no, yeah,
The
nitrate
big thing, and this
fertilizer.
was Jorge really
Mm,
did this. Jorge went around and found that he could get all the substances needed for the bomb material within about 10 blocks radius of the obelisk,
mm,
including like you need some kind of sparking agent. And they found apparently that silver was used,
mm,
some kind of silver oxide or some kind of substance. And you could literally get this anywhere.
mm.
So it was not a question of bringing this in from some place in the Middle East or whatever, or with Spanish terrorists or whatever. It was something very readily available here.
And this was a five-story building, completely collapsed,
Seven,
didn't it?
I think it
Was it
was seven
seven-story?
story.
But
Yeah.
it completely collapsed, didn't it? The
Yes.
bomb went off, hit the kind of main structural elements, and it collapsed into basically a pile of rubble. And so anybody who was visiting at the time, anybody who happened to be working there at the time, so it was an attack on a Jewish center. 2 years after another bomb had been planted at the Israeli embassy in Buenos Aires, in which
Correct.
29 people died and nearly 200 people were injured there. Somebody did claim responsibility for that one. Islamic Jihad organization claimed responsibility. Whether they did or didn't, I'm not sure has been proved. But nobody's really claimed responsibility. I mean, after your investigation, your book, was it the Iranians? Was it Hezbollah on behalf of the Iranians who planted this bomb? Do we know?
We don't know. We absolutely don't know. It was so well hidden by the authorities here. The investigation was so absurd that we probably will never know. I mean, the only way anybody will ever find out is if somebody from within the organization that did it comes out and talks about it. I don't think that's in the cards. It's been 31 years.
I mean, every year, 18th of July, at the exact moment that the bomb went off,
9:53 a.m.
9:53 a.m. Crowds will gather in the street in the Once barrio neighborhood of Buenos Aires. Families of the victims, members of the Jewish community, members of the Buenos Aires community, politicians outside to commemorate that bomb going
And
off.
also, right outside the Justice Hall, there'll be a group called Memoria Activa,
Mm.
which also has at that same time a demonstration in front of the Justice House.
Yeah, I mean, these are victims. These are families of the victims. I mean, they're
Exactly.
split. They're arguing with each other about the way the investigation. Well, they want justice, basically, don't they? They want to find the culprits. 31 years later, they still haven't. I mean, there was a former Israeli ambassador who's
Aviram,
it's yeah, Itzhak Aviran,
yeah,
who was the ambassador in Buenos Aires, 93 to 2000. So at the time the bomb went off, he in an interview said that the culprits had been dealt with by Israeli agents. There were hardly any of them left. So that was immediately denied by the then Israeli foreign minister, who called it complete nonsense. So again, There seems as though there might be some kind of light shone on this situation. Immediately it's counteracted, it's contradicted. It's possible that if an Israeli ambassador says it's the case, it's quite likely to be true, and the foreign minister says it's not. So,
But
so
if it's
yeah.
true, why don't you make it public? Why
Hmm.
don't you put it out there so that at least the families of the victims can feel like there's been some closure,
Yeah, which they haven't got.
which they have not got
Yeah.
at all.
And yet at the same time, Israel makes no bones about bumping off members of the Iranian government at the moment or its enemies around the Middle East. They're not hiding the fact that that's what they do.
Absolutely. I want to make very clear that there is no proof against the Iranians that has come out in the investigation. I think the Iranians would have loved to have pulled this one off. They absolutely despise Israel, and it's something that I would not put past them
Hmm.
for 1 second. But you have to have that evidence. The investigation should not have been going around the world, traipsing around the world. The investigation needed to be right here because I don't think Iran, Syria, Libya, whoever, Nazi elements, whoever it might have been, they probably hired some of the forces who've had experience in this, experience from the so called dirty war here. Who did they hire? I don't know. There were investigations. I should also point out when I talk about the investigation here, I mentioned the rooftops. We got together 3 huge bags of evidence, shrapnel. In fact, in a building at the corner, about 70 yards away, 70 meters away from the AMIA building, we found a human skull on a 10th story rooftop. That could have very well been the bomber
Hmm.
if it was a suicide bomber, or if not, an investigation would have shown who was at the absolute epicenter of the bombing. That was not done, Daniel. And we ended up giving those bags to Judge Galliano. I remember
Who was the investigating judge,
he
wasn't
was
he,
the
in the
main
early
judge at the
days?
time.
Yeah.
He lost those bags.
Right. On purpose, there was accusations that he deliberately obstructed his own investigation. And there was also evidence, or there was also accusations that the former president, or the president at the time, Carlos Menem, took money from the Iranians to obstruct the investigation. He, of course,
Absolutely not.
denied that. And again, it's accusations, counter accusations, denials. The later president, Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner, in 2013, I believe, reached a kind of an agreement with the Iranian government to do a joint investigation. The Jewish community were outraged. The opposition here
Well,
were
they
outraged.
weren't outraged at first.
No, okay.
They This was something really engineered by Hector Timmerman, who was
The
then the
foreign
foreign
minister,
minister.
yeah.
And basically, his thing was put up or shut up to the Iranians. If you really have nothing to hide, come here, do this. It was a bold move and probably too bold a move in
Hmm.
many ways. I thought it was as good a try because it had been 20 something years and nothing had happened. It was time to try to move the case along. A reminder that Galliano, the judge in the case, was filmed and he was actually tried and found guilty for paying off Carlos Tejeldin, a witness, $400,000 to blame the Buenos Aires police, the provincial police, when they had no evidence of that, just to like pin the blame on somebody once again at a point where we were getting close to an anniversary. They needed something. They paid this guy off 400, actually it was $450,000
Hmm.
they paid to this guy. And the money came from where? From the Argentine intelligence service, which does not have to show what they pay, what they pay out. It's all hidden money.
I mean, just to add even more confusion to the situation, Alberto Nisman, investigator into the case, was talking about, making accusations about Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner's government hours before he was due to give evidence to the Argentine parliament. He's found dead in his apartment. And even that, there were long investigations. I remember covering that and going out on the huge protests, people asking for justice for Nisman, what happened to Alberto Nisman. I remember going one demonstration, filling the streets in the streets leading up to the Plaza de Mayo in the center of Buenos Aires, tipping with rain, and tens of thousands of people were out there demanding justice. Even all these years later, 2014, we don't know whether he committed suicide,
No,
whether
we
he
do.
was. Do we for sure? It's never been proved in court, though,
It's
has it?
never been proved in
No.
court
Yeah.
because they don't want to. But all the evidence, everything points to the fact that he committed.
So why would he have?
I knew
Yeah.
Nishman.
Okay.
I've been with him a number of times. He was not the steadiest of gentlemen that I've
Mm,
ever met.
mm,
He had a very, very checkered past, and he had tried tried to find the president guilty because of just that memorandum that you were mentioning with
okay. Yeah.
Iran.
Yeah.
And he was due to appear the Monday after the Saturday that his body was found, or the Sunday that his body was found. He was due to appear in front of Congress to give evidence of the case he had against the government. He had no evidence. He
Okay.
had
Yeah.
no evidence.
So you think the shame of having no evidence that this,
I,
was enough? Because there's also talk of an assisted suicide, people breaking into his apartment to fall, and there's lots of
there's
accusations
no
that.
way anybody got into that apartment.
Okay.
It
Yeah.
was completely sealed.
Right. Right.
You know, one of the major newspapers here actually wrote an article afterwards saying that it was a bullet that came from a contiguous apartment building where the bullet was a special bullet that
Mm.
goes around corners. I mean,
Sounds like a
that's the
cartoon.
kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I have to say this. I'm going to give a primicia,
I'm
a
not.
scoop.
A scoop. Okay. A scoop.
This scoop.
Scoop. Go on.
Never talked about this before. Part of the reason I'm talking about this is because the person involved in it, the people involved in it, are no longer with us. I met during the Israeli embassy bombing a FBI agent named Skip. Just say that his name was Skip, and he was the head of counterterrorism in the Western Hemisphere for the FBI. He came here, did that, came here for the second bombing, and we were very close. I would go to Washington and meet with him, and we got to know each other, knew our families. A terrific guy. In 1998, 4 years after the bombing, 5 years after, he left the FBI
Mhm.
and he had formed his own company with with one other ex-agent. And he called me and he came down here. He'd been offered up to $1 million by a very wealthy Jewish philanthropist, let's say, who will go unnamed, to come here and to really do a complete investigation after the botched investigation here. We worked for about 6 weeks having interviews with people from the courts, people from different embassies here, people from the intelligence service, people from the police, people from all walks of life here. 6 weeks go by. We have a meeting downtown, me and Skip. And Skip says, I don't give a shit about the money. This is an impossible, impossible situation. There's nobody here that's trustable. There's nobody here who will talk to us, who will give us any information. This is a complete, this is quicksand. There's no way we can do anything. He gave up. Skip was one of the most honest people I've ever known. He gave up that. Why? Everything here pointed to hiding what was going on, and it was so well hidden And it was so ingrained, the lack of investigation here, that it was not worth even going further.
I mean, there were also rumors that kind of high-ranking military, Argentine military, it's only 11 years after the end of the dictatorship, that some of them, right-wing, Catholic, anti-Semitic officers may well also have been either carried this out themselves or were
Absolutely.
collaborating with whoever did.
But it was also money involved.
Mm.
And the thing that really, a couple of years after the AMIA bombing, there was a huge bomb or a huge explosion in Rio Tercero, a city in Cordoba, where an ammunitions factory of the government blew up. It has been shown through investigation that that was a planned explosion. Why? Because the Menem government was selling all kinds of weaponry and ammunition to the Croatians illegally and to the Ecuadorians who were in a war at that point with Peru. And they were selling this illegally. And to cover it up, it's according to the court that really did a great job on this one, they caused this explosion so there'd be no evidence of missing armament.
Yeah, these were UN sanctions.
Seven
Yeah,
people were
yeah.
killed in that bombing.
Right. These were UN sanctions, weren't they, against Argentina for selling illegal weapons to, as you say,
Exactly.
Ecuador and Croatia. Yeah. The
Exactly.
Yugoslav war was going on at the time as well. So I mean, what the Jewish community at the time, it's one of the big, it was the biggest in Latin America, 200 or so thousand, one of the biggest in the world. What's this done to the Jewish community 31 years later? I mean, the obvious thing is security outside any Jewish and Jewish schools, community centers, synagogues is massive now. You walk past them, there are bollards on the pavement to stop the possibility of suicide cars, vans crashing into it. There are guys with earpieces on prowling outside, for security. You go anywhere, you stop to take a photograph. From the other side of the street, these guys are out, they'll pounce on you.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
security is incredibly tight. So the Jewish community now lives very well guarded in collaboration, I believe, with the Israeli forces as well, advised by them certainly. So it's changed the community dramatically, hasn't it?
Absolutely. And you notice this at a time where there's tension in the Middle East. Of course, in the last month, the Jewish community here is even tenser. And you can see in how there's setups where it's hard to go into a Jewish institution without having everything checked. Your car, you have to go somewhere fairly far away from the front entrance. You can't go anywhere near it. They had relaxed that kind of security for a long time. It's been back now for the last couple of
Yeah.
months.
I mean, also quite likely because when Israel launched its first attack on Iran, President of Argentina, Javier Milei, just happened to be in Israel receiving an award for his support for Israel, where he stated categorically that Argentina, sorry, like the United States, would support the moving of its embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Always a
Exactly.
contentious issue in the Middle East, but he stated that categorically, perhaps overshadowed a little bit by what was going on at the time, but guaranteed to put, if any country was going to be put, in the firing line of anybody angry at supporters of Israel, it would again be Argentina. And I think certainly the Jewish community here would have been very well aware of that raising of tension of their president Javier Milei putting Argentina back in the firing line, if that's the case.
Absolutely. And we're talking about, I'm not saying anything about what Millet was trying to do there, right or wrong. I'm not saying anything. What I'm saying is when you do that, you have to realize consequences could occur. You have to do something about setting up a security system. I know that the Jewish community here was not feeling that that was done by the government as a means of protection. And the other thing is, when you have a case where two bombings, two huge bombings, including, I mean, the AMIA bombing at the time was the deadliest bombing since World War II of a Jewish target. No criminals indicted for that? That means whoever did it was free to do it again and to feel absolutely unencumbered in doing it again. So that's something that the Jewish community has to live with here. And we've seen it in the last month. I don't know if you've noticed the, uh, you know, all the Jewish institutions are really bolstered at
Hmm.
this point. Um, you see people really checking everybody going by. I've gone by one of the big schools here in my car, and I just noticed that I have four eyes on me as I'm driving by, and it's really concerning. I mean, it's good in some ways.
Hmm.
You know,
And then this Friday, the 18th of July, there will be another commemoration, the 31st since the bomb went off. And with all those, again, aging family members, of those victims, will again be asking questions. What about justice? What about bringing people to, let's finding the culprits, some kind of closure. Each year that goes by, they're no closer. There'll be more accusations, there'll be more, demands for justice, but they're going to be left, another year without any answers, which for them, I've interviewed some of his family members. The frustration is tangible. It's tragic to see these people trying to find this closure, trying to find these answers, and then end up arguing with one another with the Daia, the big Jewish institution in Argentina. Yeah, it's a difficult one.
it's really, really tough. You know, we did something a week ago. We did a story on the legal system and Christina Kirchner and all that. One thing we forgot to say, this is probably the only major country. I remember there was a country in Africa that had a similar situation where judges don't pay taxes. They don't pay taxes on their salary. They're exempt from paying taxes here.
So no judge in Argentina pays
Exactly.
taxes, and they get paid quite well,
They
I
get
believe.
paid quite well, and they certainly get no takeout, no withholding. And it's one of the things when you have that kind of a caste system. We were talking about it last week with, cases of corruption where you don't know what's going on. Well, in this case, we had probably the most important case in the history of Argentina, and it was completely botched by a group of people who don't pay their taxes. It's incredible.
Well, I guess we'll talk again this time next year and see if we're any closer to any kind of resolution. So, what should we talk about next week?
I think we got to get more into the economy. What do you think, Daniel?
I think so. I mean, it's the country for me where the economy. I'm not an economist, but Argentina, it's fascinating. So, Milei, president, saying that inflation is under control. Anyone who's not celebrating with him is a moaner, a whinger, a wimp. But there's a two-tier society, so we can go out
I
and.
think we really have to get into that. This is a country that's they've taken out so many loans. They owe everybody money.
Let's talk about that. In the meantime, I shall carry on in exploring my new neighborhood.
It's a pleasure, and we will see you next week.
Take care, Joe.